China and the United States have agreed to drastically reduce tariffs on both sides after a weekend of trade talks in Switzerland. U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent says the discussions were robust and that both sides showed great respect while representing their own national interests. The two countries have now agreed to suspend most tariffs for 90 days. China says it will retain 10% tariffs on U.S. goods, while the U.S. will continue with 30% tariffs. Beijing and Washington had been locked in a trade war that has threatened to upend the global economy. Let's hear more of what Scott Bessent had to say.
The consensus from both delegations this weekend is neither side wants a decoupling. And what had occurred with these very high tariffs, as Ambassador Greer said, was the equivalent of an embargo, and neither side wants that. We do want trade. We want more balanced trade, and I think that both sides are committed to achieving that.
And DW East Asia correspondent Melissa Chan joins us now from Taipei. Melissa, we just heard some upbeat language there from the U.S. Treasury Secretary. What's the Chinese side been saying?
Well, it's definitely big news in China. It is the front page headline of the People's Daily, which is the national state media paper. But I think in the coming days, in the coming hours, it will be interesting to see how people online in China respond to this. At first glance, I would say that the interpretation would be that U.S. President Donald Trump blinked. His tariffs were essentially, as his own Treasury Secretary said, an embargo and needed to be wound back. And the difficult thing, of course, is let's not forget the fact that it's just for 90 days. We don't know what's going to happen. And depending on the ear of who U.S. President Donald Trump is listening to just before the end of those 90 days, we could be in globally for yet another roller coaster ride. So from the Chinese perspective, again, the summary, I think, is that the Americans have backed down. And second of all, we still don't know, regardless of that, what's going to happen in 90 days.
Melissa, thank you very much for now. DW's Melissa Chan there in Taipei. And Steven Beardsley from DW Business is in the studio here with me to break it all down for us. Steven, a 115 percentage point drop in tariffs. That's a huge turnaround, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, Terry, and I think Melissa's right. You could definitely come away thinking this is a step back from the U.S. side, especially when we look at the language going in and its stated goals over and over again. A 30% effective tariff, and if China solves the fentanyl issue, which is one of the big problems here, that's 20 percentage points of that 30%, then technically that would be a 10% baseline tariff on China at a time in which this administration has stressed over and over again that it wants to fundamentally restructure the relationship. So I think we have to look at this and think that this is an effort to really reset these talks based on what has been an unsuccessful introduction so far. I can't imagine any other assessment of it right now.
This is really just for 90 days, though, first of all, the suspension, right? So they're not talking about ending them completely just yet. Where does it go from here? Are there going to be more talks?
We don't know. Right? We don't know. What we do know is that they're saying on the U.S. side there will be further talks and further negotiations. And then there's also been talk about a mechanism for communication between the two sides. The Chinese side, for example, has said that, I have it here somewhere, that there will be rolling consultations on a regular and ad hoc basis. And it said that working level trade talks could be held as needed. To me, that doesn't sound like really a bunch of talks are sort of set out for the next 90 days. I could be wrong, but from what we're hearing so far, it sounds like first there's been a reset, an agreement to generally talk more, but we have to walk away wondering what is the goal here. Again, if we take the Trump administration at its word that it wants to fundamentally restructure trade with China, that would require much higher tariffs than 10% and 30% likely as well. So you have to wonder what's going to go on with the fentanyl issue, first of all, and then what's going to go on. Are there going to be more purchases required from the Chinese side? Are there going to be formal negotiations in this direction? Or is there going to be panic at the end of 90 days and a threat of new tariffs? We just don't know.
So still a lot of many questions here. What does all this tell us about the balance of power, Steve, between China and the U.S.?
I think it reminds us of something that we've already known, Terry, which is that this is a deep relationship and that the prosperity of both economies depends on the other. So one country extracting itself from that is going to be very difficult. And when you have a president like Donald Trump who likes to shoot from the hip and doesn't really formulate long-term, broad-based strategies, then you're going to have issues really untethering this relationship in a normal way. What we saw was a very chaotic way. And this appears, again, to be the administration trying to take a step back from that. We've seen the dollar regain strength, which is a good thing. We've seen markets greet this. That's what the administration probably wants to see at this point. But I can't imagine they're happy with the messaging that's going to follow this. And so you have to wonder if there's going to be more turmoil coming in the future, because it doesn't seem like Trump is going to meet his goals with this 90-day period. And that means everyone's going to have to brace probably for a bit more turmoil.
Stephen, thank you very much. Steven Beardsley from DW Business.